Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. We're happy to have, I think we have about 37 participants. Maybe that'll grow just a little bit. And I'm really happy to be here with you this afternoon. So feel free to pop into the chat with where you're from, what your job is, something you want to learn this afternoon, anything just to get our conversation going, help me understand our audience. As working virtually, sometimes it can feel like we're with the audience, but I'm not always sure who's out there. So that would be awesome for me and for everybody on here to have a sense of who we're working with today. So I want to thank you for joining us. It is always great to take time for your own professional learning. And I know in leadership, that's a tough piece of time to carve out sometimes and to really honor that. So I thank you for giving yourself the gift of this time this afternoon with us. We're really happy to have you attend this Learning Bar webinar. So as Nikki said, I've worked mostly in New Brunswick with my teaching career as a teacher, vice principal, principal superintendent. I see at least one New Brunswick here. Welcome, Sylvie. It's nice to see you again. And then I started working with a couple companies, Solution Tree and the Learning Bar, working as a school improvement coach, leadership consultant, leadership coach, and had the wonderful pleasure of co-authoring several books and loving all my family time there with my children and my husband, Wayne. So it is a pleasure to be here with you today. I still work almost full time doing leadership coaching. So some of what I will share with you today is just what I'm seeing in schools right now around the topic of taking care of staff. I titled this Taking Care of Staff So They Can Take Care of the Students because we want to explore that a little bit this afternoon, what that relationship is between staff and student wellness. How does your school culture impact all of this, and what does it take to kind of have that healthier adult culture in your building? What is the intentional focus on empowerment and teacher efficacy and shared leadership bring about when we think about those school culture and staff wellness factors? And give you a little bit of time at the end just to think about questions possibly and how you might want to tweak something you're doing, create an action plan. I know we don't have a lot of time today, but just to start the thinking about something you could do a little different or something that might make you feel more centered, or at least a little bit more intentional in this focus. So again, thank you so much for joining. And as Nikki said, she will monitor the chat and the Q&A, and we'll have time at the end also for questions. So I wanted to just thank you for comments in your registration. So we gathered some comments from everybody who registered for today. And there was a really good sense that people understood there is a connection between staff and student well-being. And so over 73% of you said in different ways that there is an obvious connection when we take care of the staff, that we know the students will feel better, will be, they'll see a different teacher in that classroom. There will be opportunities for student growth because staff are coming to the building well or feeling more empowered to do that work. So we saw that, very large percentage agreeing with this. And so it validated the work we're going to do today, and definitely gives us opportunity to share some thoughts around that, and definitely want you to share your opinions. So focusing on staff well-being, there was about a 15% of you that made comments that is happening now, that we know we need to do that. And when we do a better job of that, things improve. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well this afternoon. Some of the other comments, direct comments that you made also indicated that connection that we want to think about between the leader and the students. And so in different ways, again, you were able to say that you understood there's a direct impact, that if the teacher is healthy, the students get 100% in the classroom from that teacher. If students come to work happy, they feel more content in the workplace, and students are going to see a better opportunity, and that makes parents happy, which in this case, the administrator wrote that also makes him or her happy. And so we know there are so many opportunities for us to kind of look at those culture pieces in our buildings and what happens when staff do feel well and feel happy to be there. So the support and value you also mentioned in your comments that gives us a chance to know that teachers are better equipped to create that positive learning environment, and that teaching and learning is about the relationships. And so if teachers are going to build great relationships with students, then we do need to attend to them first. And knowing the connections between students and staff are so tight, especially in these small communities. I know many of you do work in smaller schools or rural communities, and it's very tough to leave the school, as you know, and go outside the school and not see those connections or have conversations about your school. So word travels fast when staff are content and when things in the building are producing a healthier culture. And so taking care of those pieces is truly important to leaders. So we'll dive into the work a little bit. And we're going to share a couple handouts with you as well today. And one of them is from this book, Educator Wellness. I wanted to share this framework with you. I've been using it a little bit in my coaching because I feel that it does bring all the avenues and all the places that we think about when we think about staff satisfaction or being well. So Tim and Tina, the two authors, talk about physical wellness, mental wellness, emotional, and of course, social wellness. And so we as leaders, we as adults ourselves have to take care of these things. We will need to be taking care of ourselves first, obviously, before we can take care of other people. And so these 12 boxes here represent the places that we often need to spend some time thinking about or giving ourselves some attention. And when we are doing a better job in these 12 areas, then we are able to go to work in a better place. And so we know that's true of our staff as well. And so we want to think about today which pieces of this framework that we can definitely impact and which pieces are ones that you're going to have less of an impact on. And so that's where I wanted to start our conversation this afternoon. Thank you so much for just commenting in the chat. I'm just having a quick peek here. See people from all across the country. Thank you. So happy, Alberta, Manitoba. Definitely see some Quebec attendees as well. So thanks so much. I appreciate it. So this wellness framework we will definitely share with you. And what I want you to think about first is something that Dr. Doug Reeve shared with us a few years ago. So he talks about in his research that we know student achievement definitely increases in schools when teachers and administrators really focus on the things in their control versus things outside their control. So just want you to place that in your thinking this afternoon. So if we're going to have the best impact that we can have, we need to be focusing on what's in our control, not what's outside our control. So when we think about taking care of staff and staff wellness, we want to make sure our energies are spent here and those factors in our control and not over here. We might worry about the things outside our control, but they're not the factors that we're going to have the biggest influence on. So let's just talk about that for a minute. As administrators, what can we not control? So let's go back, and thinking about that framework for wellness. What are some things, if you want to use the chat again, what are some things that you cannot control? What are some factors very difficult for you to influence? And Nikki, I'm happy if anybody wants to unmic as well, just to jump in on that conversation. You're welcome to do that. So what are some things when you think about being a school leader or district leader, a division leader, what are some things that you know when you think about staff wellness that you're not going to be able to control, that you're not going to have as easy a time to influence as some other things? So I see a couple comments in the chat. Physical wellness dimensions, so the well-being of families, absolutely. What's happening in their home lives, amount of sleep they're getting, yes, for sure. So things that are happening outside of school. I also love the comment, what's happened in their past school experiences. So, they come to us from different places. So we may have staff that have had a difficult assignment before. They may have been in a school that didn't have a healthy culture. They may have had school experience that just didn't work for them. And so you don't really have the ability to control those things, but sometimes we do worry about them, and they, that causes obviously a work balance question when we think about how well they can come to work. So I just highlighted back on this framework, the ones that and it's similar to what you're mentioning in the chat, the places that you as an administrator are most likely not going to be able to impact as much as others. So what are the food routines of someone outside of the workplace? How much energy they put into exercise, how much sleep they get, how they balance their busy, their life and stress, how that all happens for them. That is a personal balance that we have to build in ourselves. And then, of course, the emotional pieces. You may try to influence some of this with how your, work, how you set up protocols and practices in your school, how you have routines for people, but how they respond emotionally is going to be really in their wheelhouse. And sometimes we have a hard time with that because we can't have as much impact as we'd like to. But if we turn to the others, they're the ones that as administrators, we can influence and we definitely can support. I don't know if it's a word control, but we definitely support how that rolls out in our buildings. And so in our divisions, in our districts, in our schools as leaders, we definitely have impact on at least these 5. And so when I think about what can we do as leaders to take care of staff, I think it's important for us to remember that we play a lot of influence on how decision-making happens in our buildings. So do we have really good decision-making practices? Do we expect people to go home every day from decision-making fatigue? And I know it's true of teachers. Teachers make hundreds of decisions every day, and it is exhausting. But we can also, as leaders, impact that by setting up good protocols, setting up systems that make sense, taking away the guessing of what should happen if a student does something, what should happen if a parent comes in unexpected, what should happen if it snows or if it's a weather day. There's so many things that we as leaders can set up for clarity and purpose and really have clear routines around that are going to help people in our buildings, the adults in our buildings, have less stress around that decision-making piece. And then, of course, the second one in that mental wellness dimension, efficacy routine. So how do we help others in our buildings and our work world build their confidence? So efficacy is a response to us feeling confident, to feeling that we have competence. And when we have good skills and we know that we've been well trained, that someone's helping us, for example, with our instructional work, we're helping teachers grow, we're giving them good feedback, we're building confident educators. That is going to help them with that mental health box as well. And so really understanding your purpose in that and your impact, really self-reflecting on what can you do to impact those two especially, will be one place that you can certainly take care of the adults in your work world, in your buildings. And then the bottom 3, I think, really makes sense when we think about school leadership. We have lots of chances to impact that relationship wellness framework. We understand that teachers see their schools as social worlds. We know that teachers build social connections in their schools. I'm working right now in a district that's closing several schools and moving teachers to new buildings, and the teachers are very stressed. They're seeing what they see as their social networks change. So their staff that they know today to be their team is not going to be their team next year. The classroom they may have had for several years is changing. The building itself that they've come to for a long time is going to be different. And so they're going to be building new relationships, and having that strong sense of social wellness is going to take some time to build again. And so just thinking about you in your current role, what can you do to help with this one? Where can you impact that relationship piece? Where do you need to take a little bit more time with some people who need perhaps this box filled a little bit more than others? And if we're not taking care of this one, then sometimes we see the other things happen. People do not show up for work. People are not able to be as engaging in front of students. They're just not as happy in your work environment. And so I've had that experience where I've had a teacher I was principal with tell me a little bit later on that she didn't think I liked her. And I remember thinking that I wasn't sure how I was giving her that message. And she explained to me that lots of mornings I would spend time with other teachers and not with her. And so I thought about that a lot. And I know that she was just a teacher I didn't worry about. And I probably didn't feel I had to stop and talk to as much. So she talked, she really taught me a lesson about, an assumption I was making about her own wellness and her own needs in my building. And I was totally wrong about that. And so finding the ways to take care of those relationships, show you care, and help people in that social dimension is really going to make a difference. And then the last two, I think we understand that trust is so important in school improvement work. We build collaborative teams, we build leadership teams, we ask teachers to follow us as leaders. We ask principals to follow us as division or district leaders. We definitely need to have that trust being built as we do the leadership work. And so considering how well you take, to kind of take the time to build those trust times into your day, that you show people you're reliable, that you show people they can count on you, you're going to have their back. Really opening up yourself to show your own vulnerability and really listening. Listening is a big piece of that. But we see so many times that teachers will leave schools and move to other schools just because they don't feel that there's a sense of trust in their building, or they don't feel trusted, or they don't trust in their leader. And that is one outlying factor that teachers will say will cause them to leave. And so working on those bottom ones for sure is going to give you a chance to feel that you're taking care of the adults in a different way. The last one, I think, I'm not sure we spend enough time on for sure, but every person that works with you needs to understand the purpose of our work. And so helping people understand why we're asking them to do something different, why we're asking them to build a collaborative team, why we're asking them to use a different literacy program, we're asking them to do different in their instruction, why we're asking them to come into work earlier or stay for a meeting after school, but giving clarity around purpose and helping others understand, it's purposeful to be a teacher. It's those students need us here every day, and helping them understand what they're contributing and how that looks is really going to make a difference in their lives. There isn't one teacher that isn't coming to school with the best intentions, and sometimes we just need to help them see their purpose and help them feel just a little bit more important. So these are the 5 off of the framework that I feel we definitely can impact the most as leaders. And just interested perhaps in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself, how you feel about that. Do those 5 make sense to you? Is there one that stands out more that you might potentially see a chance to impact a little bit more in your work right now? And how can that all help us feel that we're taking care of those adults so we see a difference in schools? Any comments in the chat around that, or definitely want to hear from you if you want to unmute. Thank you. I see a few comments.
Yeah, there's people commenting all the way through, but
awesome. Thank you, Nikki. I just need to check it now and then, right?
I'll keep the questions to after the webinar, but people are putting chat in all the way through.
Awesome, good. And rediscovering a teacher's purpose may require change of assignment, and that's in itself scary for some. James has just written, and I agree, James. It's when you ask a teacher, to change assignments. Perhaps I remember asking teachers just to change classrooms, and that seemed to be a very difficult decision for him. But I think, we have to help others find purpose. And so exploring what would make someone feel more attached to their work, more purposeful, making sure that we're providing some clarity around that is good discussion to have. So feeling comfortable having those discussions and opening up some conversation pieces is really wonderful to do. So just look at a couple more things, and then we definitely will have some time for questions and looking at your comments as well. I wanted to come back to teacher efficacy because throughout my leadership work, one of the things I see clearly is when we build teacher confidence, we definitely see school culture change, we see school student achievement change, and we just see overall teacher retention and satisfaction grow. And so getting some help there for teachers who are perhaps not as skilled as you'd like them to be, or they just don't feel confident in meeting the needs of their students, they're feeling overwhelmed, as we hear from a lot of teachers. Tackling the self-efficacy piece can be very, very rewarding. So really helping teachers understand that there is a need to build that confidence, and we as leaders are going to do whatever we can to help them with that. So again, it's back to, do we see purpose in our work? Do we have the skills? Do we have we can make the right decisions for students? All those pieces that we have impact on help build that confidence. And then when we build it collectively in our schools, we share ownership of students, we build collaboration, we build, that sense of they're our students, not my students. So we're taking some of that isolation away, and that I think the pressure a teacher feels that I have to meet the needs of all the students, that can feel pretty heavy on a teacher's shoulders. So anything we can do to build confidence and help them share that ownership also is pretty impactful. And so sometimes when we talk right now about teacher wellness and what do we do to take care of teachers, an area that I would highly recommend that you look at is, do your teachers have the tools in their toolkit to meet the needs of their students? So do they feel confident that they can do that? Or are there some ways that we could help them with that, help them understand their student needs, help them understand what each teacher can offer? So how do they, kind of build from each other's skills, and they're using each other's collective ownership of the students? Anything we do around that collaboration is going to help with this piece. And then a couple other things I wanted to just, I guess, reminders for the most part, but when we see the educators confident in their ability to make a difference in the school, we see school culture change. And so sometimes people say to me, Karen, what's one thing that we should be looking for or measuring in our school culture? I guess number one for me is always student achievement. You have a healthy school culture focused on student learning when student achievement is growing. And the second piece of that is when teachers are confident. And so when you see the teacher's ability to make a difference in the school, you see them feel more empowered. You sense that they feel confident when they go in to do the instruction. They understand that they can rely on each other. They understand that there's support from leaders for them instructionally. They have instructional leadership support. All those things make them more comfortable and confident in their positions. And so we see teacher retention build and teachers stay when there's that sense of confidence, when they can see the purpose that they have and they feel supported. And so I want to often remind leaders when I'm working with them that we can't ignore this piece. We do have to work around that confidence and definitely help build that collaboration. And we know from John Hattie's research, and I know people have been referencing this for a long time now, but his list of, the impacts on learning, the effect size, no matter when I go look at it, collective teacher efficacy is remaining at the top. And so he updates it quite often, but the collective teacher efficacy still has a very, very strong effect size. So it stays around 1.57. And we know from his research that 0.4 is his marker representing a year's growth of schooling. So anything above that, you're getting more than a year's growth in terms of impact. And so when teachers collaborate, when teachers have that confidence, whether it's individually and mostly collectively, we see student achievement grow. And so we want to have that student achievement growth because then we do know that we've got teachers that are satisfied as well. It's very tough for teachers to walk away from their positions and their classrooms when they know they're making a great impact on student learning. We see that, we just see that healthy smile. We see them feeling better about their work and definitely know that that's having an impact on that wellness piece. So let's just talk about this for a little bit. There's an opportunity every day for us to think about who else can we empower. And so as school leaders, we are always trying to think about who in our buildings can we share ownership with, who has expertise that we need, who can kind of sit on the bench with me, and we build this bench around the work that has to be done. So in school improvement work, we're always looking at ways to build leadership teams, to have distributive leadership, to share and empower others to make decisions. And why I wanted to mention it today was primarily because it's one more way that you truly can take care of your staff. When teachers feel empowered, when other leaders feel that we trust them, when others know that we're asking their opinions, we're asking for them to share their thoughts, and we genuinely, I mean authentically listen to what they have to say, then we know we're building a big bench around the work. And definitely see a big difference in staff wellness when they know that they are being empowered to take part in that leadership. And so as much work as it is, and I have a lot of school principals especially say to me, Karen, it's hard for me to balance, taking the foot off the gas and being totally in control and making my decisions with delegating them out. Trying to share that leadership is really tough for a lot of people. But the benefit of having more people understand our purpose, more people feeling ownership with that purpose, and certainly having others feel empowered to support student learning in that school and own some decisions that perhaps they never had a chance to weigh in on before, all those things add up to that wellness factor. And so anything that you can do to build on that empowerment is definitely a place that I would spend time as a leader and just think about who are some people that perhaps could be on your bench that you haven't included before. And it doesn't have to be, sharing leadership every single day with every single person, but there's ways to empower others and ask for their opinions and build trust with them. That certainly is a confidence building piece to our work. One of the things that teachers talk about a lot is that the wellness measure for them is isolation. So they're not feeling well at work when they feel isolated. So a lot of the research and a lot of surveys that have been done have pointed to teachers leaving their positions early. Teachers in 1st to 5 years of teaching have left our profession because they feel isolated. They are not sharing sharing energy with someone else. They're not learning from someone else, and they totally feel overwhelmed because they're doing the work by themselves. So as you share, the thinking around shared leadership is that we reduce that teacher isolation. So we increase the opportunity for everyone to have common purpose, for everyone to have common understanding of what our school work is about. What are we trying to improve? What is this division hoping to accomplish? What are the goals and the outcomes that we're setting? Giving everybody a chance to own that piece and share that leadership around it is going to have a good impact on that teacher isolation decreasing. And I know, in conversations, especially with young teachers, that we are losing a lot of them to the feeling that they have that they don't really feel connected. And that connection is tough sometimes for us to all understand. It's also tough for us to define, but definitely see it in those different wellness boxes in that framework. If you're not allowing people ownership of decisions, if they don't feel empowered to share in that work, if they don't see their purpose some of those places definitely are going to increase that isolation. So we want to continue to think of ways to reduce that feeling. And one of the ways definitely is increasing the ability of others to own the work that we ask them to do. So I just put a couple questions here for you to think about. How does it feel when you are asked for your opinion or your thoughts around a decision, or you get to sit at the table and be part of decision making? How does it make you feel? And then what does it feel like when you know it's a genuine ask? So one of the things we want to make sure is that we authentically are using the information offered to us. We are authentically asking people to create time and energy to answer, decisions, to take part in problem solving. What's the difference between it being genuine and when we're doing it and possibly feels like a rubber stamp? And that often is what I've heard when I've talked to teachers, is that sometimes they just feel they're part of a leadership team because someone was told they had to have a leadership team. And so it becomes more of a rubber stamp. So just wondering where your thinking is around that. How do you know it's a genuine ask when someone does ask you to participate in something that's really going to make a difference? So you can fill up the chat with that, and I'll just move us along for one more minute here. When we don't share leadership, we have a couple missed opportunities for sure. So we miss out on some opportunities to build that authentic respect and trust. So we think about trust as being one of those wellness factors in that framework. When we don't share leadership or we don't ask others to participate in problem solving, we do miss out on some of these opportunities. We have untapped teacher expertise in our buildings that we're not using. Other teachers are not learning from each other, and we're not engaging in that work with them as well. We miss the opportunity again for that collective efficacy and teacher confidence and empowerment. We miss out on the opportunity to build more ownership of student learning and obviously have common understanding of what it takes to improve a school. And so these are some really good reasons to think about increasing your shared leadership and shared ownership in whatever world you're living in right now, school, district, division, and whatever your role is. And of course, it does impact you personally, because there is also a sense of isolation that you will feel as an administrator when you're working by yourself most of the time. So trying to build more of that bench around you is also going to take care of some of your wellness factors. And we want to make sure that you as administrators are also looking at that personally, not just looking at it from the staff lens. And of course, who really misses out are students. So when we think about, increasing wellness of the adults in the building through some of these shared learning opportunities, collective problem solving, we definitely impact students. Students miss out when we don't have collective ownership, when we don't put the teachers' heads together to help solve the problems of what a student needs. When teachers feel less empowered, they're not going to be as confident. So of course, in that classroom, students are going to know that and be less engaged. So we definitely know that there's a really good reason. That little face on the screen here is a really good reason for us to think more about that empowerment piece. So in February, Joel Henderson provided a great webinar with the Learning Bar on some key wellness strategies that we can offer you. I think Nikki has a handout of some of those strategies that she's, I know, able to share with everybody. But some of the challenges that came from the participants, and some of them may have been you as well, that there's the biggest one seemed to be right now teacher burnout and a feeling of overwhelmed and stress. That 33% of the participants said that's the biggest problem that you're dealing with as administrators. And then the second highest was definitely the staff shortage and staff retention. We're definitely seeing staff shortages and staff retention issues everywhere I work, whether it's in Canada or the United States. I definitely have seen that in most schools that I've been in the last couple of years. I think it's increased from COVID for whatever reason, same as everybody else is seeing that there's less people wanting to work. More people want to work from home. It's harder to keep staff engaged. and definitely see that teacher burnout and overwhelmed feeling in a lot of places. So some of the things we just talked about in that wellness framework, I believe to be important in taking care of some of what we see in these two big categories. I know that the teachers who feel more supported, who feel that they get that emotional, those three boxes on the bottom of the framework, they get those filled a little bit or a lot at work, are going to have a chance to deal with their stress in a better way. They're probably going to feel less overwhelmed if there's shared ownership, if we're building some collaboration around student learning, if they see that they're not the only one trying to meet the needs of the students. So helping them see that purpose of that shared piece really impacts that 33%. The staff shortages and staff retention, there's no question that teachers will stay in the profession longer when they feel purposeful, when they feel well, when they feel trusted, they feel respected. That's a big piece of the retention. But I do want to say that it's an ongoing issue everywhere we work. So wherever you are, it's not just yours. There is a, clearly an issue around how many teachers we're graduating right now, and definitely how many want to stay and work in our schools. So these two, I don't think are going to be a surprise to you. I don't think they are, but we definitely have ways and strategies to be checking in on staff and building more confidence in what we're doing with them. So I'm just going to have a quick peek at the chat again. I see a couple of you really were happily explaining to me and explained to everybody that question around how do you know if it's a genuine ask? And I agree, if it's not a genuine ask, let's not ask them. That just adds to the overwhelmness. If we're asking teachers or we're asking staff to do more, and the do more is not necessary, or it's feeling like just busy work. And I've seen that happen lately where teachers are genuinely being asked to do things that are not making sense to them. We have to be very careful with that piece, obviously. The overwhelmed feeling, a lot of times what I'm seeing is teachers that really have not got the skills yet. So it isn't they're willing to do the work we're asking, but they really are coming to us less prepared. And so we're asking them to be more engaging in their instruction. We're asking them to use different programs that maybe require them to know more about assessments, know more about how to use student data. They may be being asked to do work in a different way. And so if we're asking without the skills that we're, decided the balance needs to be that we're teaching them these things, then we do also cause that overwhelmed feeling to be there. And so some of these pieces that Joel talked about on February 8th, I know come back in terms of what I see in shared ownership and shared leadership. It can definitely be an impact. And as well, Nikki definitely can share with you some of the strategies from his webinar in February as well. So I'm guessing this is a question in the Q&A, or it's going to be. So I just thought I'd stop now and we could invite some discussion around this, because this is probably what I'm asked the most often, is how can we ask others to share leadership, ask them to do one more thing, ask them to be part of a leadership team, or to take part in problem solving when we already feel we're burning people out, that we're asking too much of them. And so just would love to invite you to talk about that with me right now. Where do you see some chances or opportunities for that to get a little bit better? I know that it feels important to people, obviously, to feel valued and feel that they're contributing to the culture. And so what I see lots of times in my work is that when leaders invite others to be part of that bench and part of that shared ownership, it does create a feeling of value. It creates a feeling that my contributions matter. And so instead of causing burnout, that makes people see the purpose. That helps people see, I'm going to get out of bed today with real purpose because I'm part of that school improvement work. I'm part of what's causing our school to be better. And then helping people see the connection between coming to work and that someone actually cares about their opinions and what they contribute to the school really is more around, that shared ownership than just adding more work to their plate. Obviously, this causes trust and respect, and it also causes people to want to be part of the success. So what we hope are that these 5 points outweigh the fact that someone feels you're asking them to do one more thing, that they don't see it as one more thing because they're working differently with you. They're working to, for a greater purpose and a bigger chance for opportunity. So Nikki, are there some questions there that we should talk about now?
There was one actually not related to this slide, but it was initially asked by Alexandra. When you see that your contributions being used to make a difference, you feel heard. And then Monty said, but what about if that takes time for people to actually recognize that things are changing? So what kind of ideas can we put into action?
I love that. And that's a really good point. School improvement work does take time, right? And we all know that sometimes we impatiently want things to change quite quickly. And so I guess my advice usually to any leader is to stay the course. You have school improvement work feel messy most of the time. It's not linear. It feels like a squiggly line, and we kind of go forward, then we go backwards, and it sometimes feels like we're not getting anywhere. What I see happen sometimes is you've got the right strategies in place and you're doing the right work, but you don't wait long enough for the changes to happen, so you throw it out. And if you're truly building relationships, if you're truly building collaboration, you're building shared ownership, you're helping others see that these pieces of the pie are all going to fit together. You've got puzzle pieces that come together at some point and create the best school that you can possibly create. If you can stay the course on that correct work, it's the right work you're doing, and help others see that. So share the small wins. Something changes. We have the opportunity to notice when things are better. So having clarity around that we want to notice when student achievement changes. We want to notice when a classroom's, just a better place to be, when students are more engaged, when you see teachers laughing and having a little bit more conversation in the staff room. You see 2 people show up for something you invited them to do as a staff instead of just one. The smallest pieces will turn the puzzle, kind of turn the pages in that book. But we have to take the time to build the right work, and healthy school culture does not happen overnight. But what I see happen the most is that we give up a little bit too quickly and we fall back to, this isn't working. We didn't notice the small wins. We didn't notice something change. And so when we don't take the time to kind of celebrate those small pieces as we go and have some markers or some, short-term SMART goals that are going to be good for you to notice as well. I remember when I finally got that teacher to smile a little bit more that told me she didn't think I liked her, I would start to see her smiling a little bit more around the school, and I felt that was a big win. And so it doesn't have to be significant time before you see some small wins, but we do need to notice them, and we need to keep plugging at the right work while we're waiting for the, kind of the bigger things to show up. I don't know if that answers the question, but definitely I see a lot of times we're working on the right work and we just give up a little bit too fast.
I actually liked the phrase that Alison called micro wins.
Micro wins.
And sharing those micro wins with students as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm going to say back to the authentic piece and genuine piece. It isn't any different with staff than it is with students. Students, sometimes we're not giving them very good feedback. We're not actually commenting on what they're doing right and what we see in their work that's purposeful. It's the same thing with staff. So it's not just about saying great job today. Everybody rah rah. We're not talking about that cheerleader mentality. we want to notice and significantly give feedback. So we notice the right work changing and commenting on those pieces. I noticed your class was more engaged in your, in your direct instruction today. I noticed your students were well-behaved going to the gym today. I noticed that you've been able to get to work on time this week. I noticed that you're participating in staff wellness activities, and I really appreciate that. So, contributing to their wellness means that we're giving them more purposeful feedback, the same thing we want teachers to do with students. So those micro wins have to be quite purposeful too. Or it could be like when I noticed the teacher smiling more, that was just an internal win for me. I wasn't going to go up and, say to her, I counted you smiling 5 times this week. That's not what we're really talking about. But we definitely want to honor the work that changes and honor the practices and protocols and things that we're seeing different.
I also note here that Dan, they capture the feedback, input and ideas and make them actionables, and then they have a timeline and report back on the kind of the timeline when they have like updates. So that's an interesting way, very structured.
Right. And I'd say on that, Dan, too, it's that reciprocal accountability. So we're going to hold people accountable for, those plans we create with them, but they're going to owe us accountable for us to follow up. And so one of the things we sometimes drop the ball on ourselves as leaders is follow up. And when we do that, then people, around us start to say, well, this work isn't that important. And, perhaps this too shall pass. So getting good at that reciprocal accountability. So we follow through, we follow up, we build action plans with others, and, we share their wins with them. We celebrate with them when something changes.
Karen, we do actually have a question in the Q&A. Do you want me to ask it now? So actually, it relates to Alexandra's initial comment. And Alexandra, I'm not actually sure whether the question was what you wanted to get out of the webinar or whether it was what else can I do to support school staff? So there was that one, and what are some effective strategies for monitoring and supporting the mental health and well-being of staff? Similar, I think. I might be able to answer some of that, though. Based on some of the comments that you mentioned about Joel's presentation, we did go through a few of the strategies. The research team here did extensive research on the factors that influence staff well-being, and they put that into a framework document. And the framework documents, we have strategies for each of the key influencing factors in staff well-being. And that's part of the Ask All Staff survey. But what I could do actually is share the key factors with the team, and then people could actually get in contact to find out, to make a selection of what the detailed strategies they're looking for. That might be quite useful. Another one, how do we go around measuring the culture? So a healthy school culture, I guess, of a district to really understand where we're at.
So thank you, Nikki. That's a great question. One of the things that we talk a lot about with school culture is, some people say, well, it's just a feeling when I walk in a school. That, to me, that's more climate than culture. But when I think about healthy school culture, the number one indicator for me is student achievement. When when we think about schools are for students, schools are for learning. And one of the first measures for me is that student learning is what the school's about. So when schools grow as student-centered buildings, when staff understand that we're here for students, when we see that shared ownership of students. So think about it, in terms of the language you hear in the building. They're our students, not my students. We're putting our heads together to problem solve. We have shared ownership. So some of the things we already talked about today, to me, are indicators of healthy school culture. We understand that, we could go in, for example, I could come to your building, you could hire me or hire someone else to come and do a bit of a culture audit. And we would want to talk about and listen for the language we hear in the building. So do people, are people coming to work and talking about student learning? Are we collaborating around data? Are we hearing shared ownership? Are we seeing teachers coming into the building excited to work with students? Is there trust and respect in that building that we can see it's mutual? The teachers, rely on the administrators and the administrators can rely on the teachers. So when we think about measures of healthy culture, they kind of bubble up into more things like that. And honestly, a lot of it is around those pieces that we talked about in that framework, that we're building relationships, we're building student-centeredness, we're asking people to authentically be part of problem solving and decision making. We're providing really good protocols so teachers are not confused about what's expected. There's good professional learning for teachers to learn how to be a better teacher. We're building good school improvement practices into our school so everybody in that building knows what the right work is. And so I do hear a lot of people say you can't measure culture. I think that for me, the culture piece around student-centeredness and shared ownership, that's where you get the healthy culture from, when those things grow and grow in your building. And then you start to see the other pieces. Staff are more content to be working there because it's purposeful and it's about students. And, those other things kind of bubble into that. So I don't know if that's answering the question, Nikki, but definitely I see healthy school culture centered around students, student learning, and that shared ownership of students as number one.
Karen, I may have to cut you off here just because of the time.
Yes.
If there is any other questions, you can put it in the chat, or the questions now, and we'll make sure that we actually get those to Karen.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, thank you, Karen. Oh, you haven't finished. I'm sorry.
That's all right. No, I had other slides, but I really wanted to stop there because I knew there were questions. I'm just going to flip to the end so people have my contact information actually, so they can definitely send me a note if there's something that I can send along. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Karen. So we aren't going to open it for Q&As now because we had quite a lot of Q&As already. Yeah, so I really appreciate the presentation. One of the things I found was really good to come out of, we always hear about supporting our staff, but there was quite a strong focus around the actual school district staff and ensuring that you're of good health and have a good work-life balance. So that was really good to hear. So before I move on, I'm going to open up the poll quickly because we are running a new round of webinars, and there's some of the features that came out during that in the chat was things like work-life balance and information around trauma-informed leadership. And so I just want to open up the poll quickly. Just if you could just take a couple of minutes to just take a couple of seconds to give me some ideas of what you would actually like. I'm just going to open that up. So it's open now. I'll leave that open until the end. Our next webinar is probably going to take place around mid-April. We're just doing some finalized planning, and the theme is actually going to be around trauma-informed leadership. So hopefully that's going to be of interest to some of you here. So I'll be sending you some information about that over the next 2 weeks. Reminder to you, there will be somebody reaching out with an email with all of the recordings and also some supporting pieces that Karen didn't quite get round to talking about. So sorry, Karen, but they'll be included in the email. And if you have any questions around any of the pieces, you can reach out to the team directly. And any other questions that you had, we'll get back to you on. So I really appreciate everyone's time, and we are 4 minutes early, so you could have done one more slide there, Karen. Sorry.
No worries.
Thank you again for your time today, and have a nice afternoon, evening.